She sat across from me in that dimly lit cafe, hands trembling around her coffee cup. "I need to tell you something before midnight," she whispered. "Something they made me promise to never reveal." This woman had spent 17 years inside covens I didn't even know existed. And what she told me about New Year celebrations made my blood run cold. She said there are invisible contracts being signed every December 31st. Agreements most people don't even know they're entering. Doorways that swing open with a simple phrase. "When you celebrate without understanding," she said, "you're not just marking time, you're marking yourself." She looked around nervously. "They count on your ignorance. They always have." What she revealed next changed how I see everything. Let me take you back to something that happened 3 years ago in a small town nobody talks about anymore. There was a family, normal people. They threw the biggest New Year party on their street every single year. Confetti, champagne, midnight countdowns. The whole neighborhood would gather. But on January 2nd, 2022, their teenage daughter stopped speaking, completely silent, for 6 weeks. When she finally opened her mouth again, she said 5 words that shattered her parents. Something came in with permission. Now I know what you're thinking. Coincidence. Trauma. Psychological break. But here's what the former witch told me in that cafe, and I want you to really hear this. She said that New Year's Eve is not just a date on a calendar. In certain spiritual circles, it's known as a threshold night, a boundary where the old year dies and the new one is born. And in the occult understanding of time, death and birth are not celebrations, they are gateways, vulnerable moments, transitions where spiritual laws operate differently. Think of it like a house during renovation. Walls are torn down, doors are removed, there's dust everywhere, structure exposed. That's what January 1st represents in the unseen realm, a moment of structural transition. And during renovations, anything can walk through the open walls. She explained that when you celebrate without discernment, without spiritual awareness, without understanding what season you're actually in, you're essentially leaving your door unlocked in the most dangerous neighborhood. You're announcing presence without protection. You're making noise without authority. But here's the part that stunned me most. She said, it's not the celebration itself that's the problem. It's the unconsciousness, the autopilot, the cultural hypnosis that makes you repeat patterns without examining them. They don't need your intentional agreement, she told me. They just need your unintentional participation. Let me give you a picture. Imagine signing a document you never read. You saw everyone else signing it. It looked official, felt normal, so you signed too. Years later, you discover that document gave away something precious. Your peace, your clarity, your spiritual boundaries. And the worst part, you don't even remember signing it. That's what unconscious celebration does. It enrolls you in contracts written in invisible ink. The witch leaned closer and said something I'll never forget. The enemy doesn't need elaborate rituals from you. He just needs you asleep at the wheel during crucial moments. That's enough. So before you mindlessly wish someone happiness for a year you haven't spiritually prepared for, ask yourself, do I even know what I'm agreeing to? Have I examined this moment? Have I closed the doors that need closing and opened only the ones that should be opened? Because 2026 is not just another year, it's a doorway. And who you become on the other side depends entirely on how you walk through it. Stay awake, stay discerning, and never celebrate what you haven't first understood. Most people don't realize that the spiritual realm operates on principles of agreement and permission. When you participate in celebrations without understanding their deeper significance, you're not just having fun, you're entering into unseen agreements. Think about how contracts work in the physical world. You sign something, and suddenly you're bound to terms and conditions. The spiritual dimension works similarly, except the contracts are written in intention, energy, and unconscious participation. When you blindly wish someone, Happy New Year, or celebrate a threshold moment without discernment, you're essentially giving your spiritual signature to something you haven't examined. The former which explained that darkness doesn't always need elaborate blood rituals or pentagrams. Sometimes it just needs your passive agreement, your willingness to go along with what everyone else is doing without asking why. These invisible contracts can bind your peace, your clarity, and your spiritual authority for an entire year. They create legal entry points for forces that shouldn't have access to your life. And the most dangerous part, you don't even know you've signed anything until the consequences begin to manifest. Breaking free requires conscious awareness, intentional repentance, and actively revoking what you unknowingly agreed to. Wake up before you sign away another year. Imagine your house during a major renovation. The front door is off its hinges. Windows are removed. Walls are partially torn down. There's no security system running because everything is in flux. During this vulnerable state, anyone could walk right in, invited or not. This is the perfect picture of what happens spiritually on threshold nights like New Year's Eve. In the unseen realm, transitions are not neutral moments. They're spiritually significant passages where the old dies and the new is born. Death and birth are the two most vulnerable states in all of existence. Babies are fragile. Dying people are defenseless. And in that in between space, that liminal moment of transition, spiritual laws operate differently. Boundaries become permeable. What was once solid becomes fluid. The enemy understands this better than most believers do. He positions himself at these threshold moments, waiting for people to cross over without protection, without awareness, without spiritual covering. When you celebrate mindlessly during these transitions, you're essentially walking through a construction zone without a hard hat, without checking for danger, without any concern for what might fall on you. The witch warned that covens specifically target threshold nights because they know people's guards are down. You're distracted by champagne and confetti while doorways you didn't even know existed swing wide open. Guard your transitions. Here's what shook me most about what the former witch revealed: darkness doesn't always announce itself with obvious evil. It doesn't need you to attend a seance or draw symbols on the floor. It doesn't require your intentional rebellion or conscious rejection of God. Sometimes all it needs is your sleepwalking participation in moments that carry spiritual weight. Think about how hypnosis works. The hypnotist doesn't force you into a trance. They simply guide you into a state where you're no longer consciously aware of what you're agreeing to. You're still you, still awake in a sense, but your critical thinking is bypassed. Your discernment is suspended. And in that state, suggestions become commands that your subconscious obeys without question. Cultural celebrations work the same way. Society hypnotizes you into participating without thinking. Everyone does it, so it must be fine. But the enemy has embedded spiritual significance into dates, times, and traditions that most people never examine. Your autopilot is his access point. Your "I'm just doing what everyone else does" is his legal entry. The witch said they would laugh about how easy it was, how Christians would participate in things with occult roots simply because they were wrapped in pretty paper and social acceptability. Wake up. Question everything. Your unawareness is not innocence, it's vulnerability. Stop thinking about New Year's as just a calendar change. It's not simply December 31st turning into January 1st. In the spiritual architecture of time, it's a doorway, a portal between what was and what will be. And here's the critical truth: doorways don't determine where you end up. How you walk through them does. You can stumble through drunk on champagne and distraction. You can run through in excited celebration without looking at what's on the other side. Or you can walk through intentionally, prayerfully, with your eyes wide open and your spirit covered. The same doorway, three completely different outcomes. The number 2026 itself carries spiritual weight in certain occult systems: numerology, sacred geometry, prophetic calculations that most people know nothing about. I'm not saying you need to fear numbers, but I am saying you need to understand that the enemy works with precision. He's not random, he's strategic, and he positions himself at doorways that matter. What you become in 2026 is being decided right now, not on January 15th, when you finally get your life together, not in March when you start that new routine. Right now, this threshold moment, are you crossing it asleep or awake, guarded or exposed, with discernment or distraction? The former witch's final warning echoes in my mind. The year doesn't shape you. How you enter it does. Choose consciousness. Choose prayer. Choose to walk through this doorway like you actually understand what's at stake.